Welcome to Rare Coins Numix, where ordinary quarters turn into unexpected treasures. These rare Washington-era coins are worth thousands, and some could still be hiding in everyday change. Stick around to find out which ones might be sitting in your pocket right now. Let's take a quick look at the ones you need to watch for. Let's start today's video with something simple. A coin that might already be sitting in your pocket, coin jar, or even in your old collection. It's easy to overlook, but it tells a much bigger story than you might expect that we're talking about the 1967 Washington quarter. No mint mark. Just a regular quarter, at first glance. But stay with me. Because what seems like a basic coin turns out to have some surprising details, and one example of this coin sold for a price that's hard to believe. This quarter was minted during a very important time for U.S. coinage. The mid-1960s brought major changes to how coins were made. Up until 1964, U.S. quarters were struck in 90% silver. That changed in 1965, when the U.S. Mint stopped using silver in most circulating coins due to rising metal prices and a national coin shortage. The Washington quarter, like the dime and half dollar, switched to what's called clad composition. That means the coin is made from a copper core, with outer layers of copper and nickel. It still looked similar to the silver versions, but its intrinsic value dropped significantly. Now here's something unique about the coins from 1965 to 1967. During those 3 years, the U.S. Mint made a decision to remove all mint marks from its coins. That's why this 1967 Washington quarter doesn't show a D for Denver or an S for San Francisco. Even though it was struck in Philadelphia, you won't see a P either. The 1967 Washington quarter had a huge mintage. Over 809 million were made in Philadelphia alone. That means this coin is definitely not rare based on how many were produced. But that's also what makes it easy to ignore. Even though hundreds of millions were made, only a very small number have survived in exceptional condition. Most quarters from 1967 were used in everyday transactions, vending machines, toll booths, grocery stores. They got scratched, worn, and tossed around like any other coin, but a few were never used at all. They were pulled aside early, maybe by someone working at the mint, or a careful collector. These coins were stored in ideal conditions, never touched with bare hands, never cleaned, never dropped. And that's what collectors are really looking for. Now let's talk about what collectors mean when they say a coin is in mint state. You might hear the term MS followed by a number, MS60, MS65, MS68, and so on. This grading scale helps describe the condition of a coin. An MS60 coin is uncirculated but may have marks or dull surfaces. MS65 is sharper, with better luster and fewer contact marks. MS68 or above is considered extremely rare, almost perfect under magnification, with clean surfaces, strong strike, and eye-catching detail. For a clad coin like the 1967 quarter, it's very hard to find high grades. The metal is softer than silver, so it wears more easily. Plus, most people didn't think these coins would be valuable, so they weren't handled with care. Let's go over the coin's design. On the front, you'll see George Washington facing left. This portrait was created by John Flanagan and has been used on quarters since 1932. Above Washington's head is the word Liberty. To the left, under his chin, is the motto, "In God We Trust." At the bottom, the year, 1967. The back of the coin shows a bald eagle with wings spread, perched on a bundle of arrows. Under the arrows is an olive branch. This symbolizes both strength and peace. Around the edge are the words, United States of America, and quarter dollar. At the top of the eagle, it reads, E pluribus unum. It's a clean design. One that millions of people grew up seeing, using, and spending. Now, let's talk about value. If you have a typical 1967 quarter in your hand right now, it's probably worth face value, 25 cents. If it's in slightly better shape, maybe a few dollars to a collector. If it's uncirculated and graded MS65 or MS66, it might be worth a bit more, anywhere from $10 to $100 depending on condition and the market. But here's where it gets interesting. A very small number of these quarters have been graded at MS68 by services like PCGS or NGC. These coins are incredibly well preserved, often showing full details in Washington's hair and the eagle's feathers. They also have clean surfaces and original mint luster. One such coin came to auction that it was listed as the finest known example, graded MS68, with superb eye appeal and outstanding strike quality. Collectors recognized how rare it was. Bidding was competitive. It didn't just go for a few $1,000s. The final sale price, $113,000. That's right. A quarter that originally cost 25 cents sold for over $100,000. Not because of an error. Not because of silver. Not because of low mintage. It was valuable because of its perfect condition, grading, and rarity at that level. So if you come across a 1967 quarter that looks almost brand new, with sharp detail and brilliant luster, it might be worth getting it graded. You never know, it could be one of the finest examples left. That wraps up our first coin for today. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more. Up next, we've got a coin that most people wouldn't look at twice. It's one you might find in a parking meter, a vending machine, or even the bottom of your drawer. But behind its ordinary appearance lies a surprising story that could make any coin collector stop and take notice. We're talking about the 1974 Washington quarter. This coin doesn't jump out at you. It's not rare because of a low mintage. It's not silver. And it doesn't feature a special design. But as with many coins, the story isn't always about what it is, it's about the condition in which it survives. Let's look at some quick facts first. The 1974 quarter was part of the regular circulation run of Washington quarters. These coins were produced at 3 different U.S. mint locations, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins from Philadelphia carry no mint mark, which is typical for that mint during this time. Denver coins have a D mint mark, and San Francisco coins feature an S, although most of those were made as proof coins, intended for collectors and not everyday USE.AS for the metal composition. The 1974 quarter follows the clad format that had become standard since 1965. It's made of a pure copper core, sandwiched between layers of copper and nickel. The outer layers give the coin its silvery color, but there's no actual silver content. The obverse side, or front of the coin, features the familiar image of George Washington, facing left. This portrait was designed by John Flanagan, originally introduced in 1932, and it remained largely unchanged for decades. Surrounding the portrait are the inscriptions, "Liberty, in God we trust," and the date, 1974. The reverse shows an eagle standing proudly with wings spread wide. It's perched on a bundle of arrows, which sit above 2 olive branches. This design is symbolic, strength and peace, side by side. Around the edge are the words, United States of America, $quarter, and just above the eagle, the motto, E pluribus unum. Now, let's talk about how many of these coins were made, and why that matters. In total, the U.S. Mint struck over 800 million 1974 quarters across all 3 locations. Philadelphia produced around 350 million. Denver added over 250 million more. And the San Francisco Mint struck roughly 2.6 million proof coins. So clearly, this is not a rare coin in terms of quantity. They were mass-produced, circulated nationwide, and continue to show up in pocket change even today. That's what makes it such a surprise when one turns out to be worth more than many people earn in a year. The key is quality. Most quarters from 1974 are heavily worn. They've passed through hands, machines, counters, and cash drawers for decades. Their edges are dull, the details are soft, and surfaces are covered in tiny scratches. That's what you'd expect from a coin designed to be used every day, but every now and then, a coin somehow avoids all of that. It's never spent, never circulated, and stays protected, often by chance. These coins are the ones that catch the attention of collectors. To measure that kind of condition, grading services like PCGS and NGC use the Sheldon scale, which runs from 1 to 70. A coin graded at MS 60 is uncirculated, but may have noticeable marks or dull luster. A coin graded MS-65 is much sharper, with only minor contact marks and strong eye appeal. But a coin graded MS-67 or higher is extremely rare, especially for something like a 1974 quarter. That's because reaching that grade means the coin has essentially no flaws visible under magnification. It means the strike was perfect, the surfaces remained untouched, and the mint luster, the natural shine of the coin, was preserved exactly as it came from the press. In one exceptional case, a 1974 quarter was found in near perfect condition. It was submitted to a professional grading service and received a grade of MS-68, which places it among the best examples of this coin ever recorded. Only a tiny handful of 1974 quarters have ever achieved that level. Because of its flawless appearance, perfect surfaces, and standout quality, this coin quickly gained attention in the numismatic community. When it finally went to auction, collectors knew exactly what they were looking at. This was no ordinary pocket change. This was a top-grade survivor of a coin that was never supposed to be rare. The bidding was competitive. It wasn't just about owning a quarter, it was about owning one of the best preserved examples from a year where millions were forgotten, used, and worn down, and when the final hammer fell, the price stunned many. That single 1974 Washington quarter sold for $91,000. Not bad for a coin that started its life as 25 cents. What makes this even more fascinating is that the coin didn't have any dramatic error. No doubling, no missing letters, no silver planchet. Its value came purely from its condition. So next time you're going through your change, or flipping through an old coin jar, don't just look for old dates. Look closely at the surface. Is the luster still there? Are the details sharp? Is there any wear? Because even a coin as common as the 1974 quarter can be worth far more than you expect, if it's the right coin, in the right condition. Now let's move on to a coin that you've probably handled without thinking twice. It's not flashy. It's not old. And most of the time, it doesn't stand out at all. But behind that simple appearance is one of the biggest surprises in modern coin collecting. We're talking about the 1985 P. Washington quarter. This is a coin that was never intended to be rare. In fact, it was minted for everyday use, to sit in cash registers, get tossed in tip jars, and roll around in glove boxes. And that's what happened to the overwhelming majority of them. But a few, a very select few, managed to avoid all of that. And that's where the story changes. Let's start with the basics. The 1985 P quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, as indicated by the small P mint mark just above the date on the front of the coin. This mint mark had only been used on quarters since 1980. Before that, Philadelphia coins had no mint mark at all. This coin belongs to the long-running Washington quarter series, first introduced in 1932 to celebrate the 200th birthday of George Washington. The design by John Flanagan features a left-facing profile of Washington on the obverse, or front of the coin. The word "Liberty" arches along the top. "In God We Trust" sits just to the left, and beneath Washington's chin is the year, 1985. On the reverse, we see an eagle with its wings fully extended, perched on a bundle of arrows, with olive branches underneath, symbolizing both defense and peace. The inscriptions, "United States of America," and "$quarter," circle the outer edge, while "E pluribus unum" appears just above the eagle's head. At first glance, there's nothing unusual about it. The design is the same one used for decades. The materials are standard, a copper-nickel-clad composition, which had been in use since 1965. The weight is typical, 5.67 grams. The diameter? 24.3 millimeters. In short, this coin is ordinary in every way, until you look closer. Now, let's talk about production. In 1985, the Philadelphia Mint struck more than 775 million quarters. That's over 750 million coins. It was one of the higher mintages in the Washington quarter series. These coins were released into circulation all across the country, and they were used heavily, just like they were meant to be. Because of that, most 1985 P quarters show heavy signs of use. The high points in the design, like Washington's cheek and jawline, often wear down quickly. Scratches, dings, loss of detail, All of that is normal for a circulated coin from this year, and that's what makes high-quality examples so difficult to find. You see, coin collectors don't just look for specific dates or mint marks. They also look for condition, and not just any condition, but original, untouched mint state condition. That means the coin has never been in circulation, has full detail, no wear, and still has its original luster from the minting process. To measure a coin's condition, experts use the Sheldon grading scale, which ranges from 1 to 70. A grade of MS60 means the coin is uncirculated, but may have obvious flaws. MS65 is a strong uncirculated grade, with great eye appeal and only a few minor marks. MS67 or above. That's entering elite territory, and when it comes to modern clad quarters like this one, hitting those top grades is extremely rare. The metal used, a combination of copper and nickel, doesn't hold up as well over time. It marks more easily, and it's harder to strike with perfect clarity. That's why, even though millions were made, very few 1985 P quarters have survived in truly perfect condition, but once in a while, one does. One coin, struck sharply and preserved carefully from the moment it left the mint, was submitted to a professional grading service. It was evaluated under magnification. The fields, or background surfaces, were smooth and clean. The strike was crisp, with no signs of weakness in the lettering or fine details. And the result, that 1985 P quarter was certified in mint state condition, with a grade so high, it placed it among the finest known of its kind. No errors. No variety. No experimental materials. Just perfect preservation. And because of that, the value of this particular coin reached a level no one expected. Its current value stands at $72,000. And what's important here is that this value wasn't driven by rarity of date, or precious metal content, or even a famous minting error. It came down to one factor, the coin's condition. It's a reminder of how unpredictable coin values can be, especially when it comes to modern circulating coins. Sometimes, the most valuable pieces are the ones you'd never expect. And in the case of the 1985 P quarter, it wasn't about being old. It wasn't about being rare. It was about being survivable in perfect shape. So what does this mean for you? If you're someone who checks their change or looks through coin rolls, this is the kind of coin that could slip past unnoticed. But if you find a 1985 P quarter that looks sharper, shinier, and cleaner than usual, don't spend it. Next up, we've got a coin that proves even small mistakes can lead to big value. At first glance, it's just a 1991 quarter. Nothing flashy. A standard Washington design. A small D mint mark for Denver. The kind of coin that's probably passed through vending machines, cash drawers, glove compartments, and jacket pockets for decades. But in this case, a quiet little error turned an everyday coin into something worth far more than you'd ever expect. Let's take a step back and talk about what this coin actually is. The 1991 D Washington quarter is part of the long-standing quarter series that began in 1932. By the early 90s, the design was familiar and unchanged: George Washington on the front, an eagle with outstretched wings on the reverse, and a copper-nickel-clad composition that was standard for modern circulation. In that year alone, the Denver Mint produced over 630 million of these quarters. That's an enormous number. So, if you're wondering whether this coin is rare just because of the date or the mint, it's not. In fact, most 1991 D quarters are still floating around today, scratched up, worn down, and worth exactly 25 cents. But here's where things take a surprising turn. Among those hundreds of millions of quarters, one coin came out wrong. And in the world of coin collecting, wrong can sometimes mean very, very valuable. This wasn't just a smudge or minor misalignment. This was a true mint error, a striking mistake that occurred during production at the mint. Specifically, the coin was struck on the wrong planchet. Now, let's break that down. Each denomination of coin, the penny, nickel, dime, quarter, uses its own specific blank metal disc, called a planchet. Each has its own size, thickness, and metal content. But every once in a while, a blank intended for one coin ends up in the wrong press. That's what happened here. A planchet meant for another coin, possibly a nickel, or even a foreign denomination, accidentally made its way into the quarter press. And when the quarter die struck it, it imprinted the full quarter design onto a planchet that wasn't the right size or metal. The result? A coin that looks like a quarter at first glance, but isn't quite right. It might be thinner, lighter, or even missing its edge reading, those little ridges around the rim. The color might be off, too. It might have a slightly different tone or sheen compared to a normal quarter. And those tiny differences are where the magic begins. This wasn't a damaged coin. It wasn't altered after it left the mint. It was a genuine minting error, confirmed by professional grading and backed by physical evidence, a mismatch in planchet, weight, and composition. What made this particular coin even more remarkable was its condition. It hadn't been sitting in circulation for long. The surfaces were still clean. The fine details in Washington's hair, the eagle's feathers, the date, and mint mark, they were all crisp and fully visible. Collectors and grading services don't just look for errors, they also look at grade. And when a coin like this combines a rare error with excellent preservation, that's when it crosses the line from interesting to exceptional. Of course, not every error coin is valuable. Many are minor, common, or too damaged to matter. But when the mistake is unusual, dramatic, and easy to verify, the value rises fast, especially when it's found in high condition. And that's exactly what happened here. Once authenticated and certified by experts, this 1991 D quarter became part of a very small group of documented error coins. And among collectors, coins like this don't stay quiet for long. When this particular error quarter went to auction, it sparked real interest. Not just because of the mistake, but because of how clearly the error could be seen and how well the coin had been preserved. It wasn't just a curiosity, it was a showpiece. And the final auction price? A staggering $65,000. That's right, $65,000. For a coin that originally had a face value of just 25 cents. Let that sink in. It's a strong reminder that coins don't have to be ancient to be valuable. Sometimes, all it takes is the right mistake, the right timing, and someone sharp enough to recognize the difference. So what's the big takeaway here? If you're sorting through quarters and something seems a little off, maybe the color looks strange, or the coin feels unusually light, or the size is just barely different, don't ignore it. Pull it aside. Weigh it. Compare it. Because that tiny detail might be your first clue to something rare, authentic, and incredibly valuable. Because in the world of coin collecting, mistakes aren't always flaws. Sometimes, they're the reason a coin becomes legendary. Moving on to the last coin in today's lineup, and this one's a perfect example of how an ordinary year can still produce something extraordinary. Let's take a look at the 1996 D Washington quarter, a coin you've probably seen hundreds of times without ever realizing what it could be worth. But in one rare case, a production mistake turned a regular Denver minted quarter into a serious collector's item. Now, let's be clear, 1996 was not a rare year for quarters. The Denver Mint alone produced over 900 million of them. That means these coins are still found in circulation today, and under normal circumstances, they typically hold no more than face value. But as you've learned by now, every rule has its exceptions, and in this case, the exception is due to a minting error that makes this quarter truly stand out. Before we dive into the error itself, let's take a closer look at the coin. On the obverse, you'll find the familiar profile of George Washington, a design that had already been in use for over 60 years by that point. Above his head, the word Liberty. To the left, In God We Trust, and below, the date, 1996. Just above the date, there's a small D mint mark, standing for Denver, the mint where this coin was produced. Flip the coin over, and you'll see the classic reverse, the American bald eagle, wings outstretched, perched on a bundle of arrows, with olive branches underneath. It's a strong, traditional image that had graced the back of the Washington quarter since the 1930s. So far, nothing unusual. But that changes the moment you notice something's not quite centered. This particular 1996 D quarter has what's known as a misaligned die error, a striking mistake where the two dies used to imprint the coin were not properly aligned. This means the image, whether on one side or both, ends up off-center. Part of the design may press closer to the edge than it should, and in some cases, details might even be missing entirely. Instead of being centered and balanced, the coin looks tilted or lopsided, which can be instantly noticeable, or subtle, depending on the severity of the misalignment. These kinds of errors usually happen during the minting process when equipment is worn out, improperly set up, or not adjusted correctly after repeated strikes. It's a mechanical issue, but the results can be eye-catching, and highly collectible. What makes this particular error even more interesting is that, aside from the misalignment, the coin is in exceptional condition. It hadn't spent years in pockets or change jars. It wasn't scratched up or worn down like most coins from that year. The design remains sharp, the details clear, and the surfaces relatively clean. That's a big deal in coin collecting. Because even when an error is rare, its value depends heavily on how well it's preserved. Collectors are drawn to coins that not only show a unique mistake, but also display that mistake clearly and in high grade. That's exactly what happened with this one. Think about the odds: out of almost 1 billion coins minted that year in Denver, only a tiny fraction would have had this error. And of those, most would go unnoticed or get damaged in circulation, but this one was found early, protected, and eventually authenticated by professionals. It was confirmed to be a true mint error, not damage, not a post-mint alteration, but a genuine misalignment during the striking process. Once verified and graded, it was officially recognized as a standout piece, a combination of error rarity, visual appeal, and near uncirculated condition. And as interest in mint errors continues to grow, so does the demand for coins like this. When this 1996 D quarter hit the collector market, it didn't go unnoticed. Error collectors, Washington quarter specialists, and even general hobbyists took interest. And when it went up for sale, the final price shocked many who had overlooked this date for years. So how much was it worth? This single quarter, with its rare misaligned die error and excellent condition, sold for a current market value of $59,000. Not because it's old. Not because it's made of silver or gold. But because of one minting mistake, and someone who had the eye to spot it. It's a strong reminder that rarity doesn't always come from age or metal. Sometimes, it comes from a small moment of imperfection that made it past inspection. And more importantly, it's a reminder to never overlook the coins you see every day. If something feels off, the way the image is placed, the shape of the rim, the centering of the strike, take a closer look. Because you never know. What looks like a minor flaw, might actually be a major find. And just like that, your day could go from ordinary, to unforgettable. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed exploring these rare and valuable quarters, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more coin finds and collecting tips. We post daily videos. Leave a like if you learned something new, and feel free to share your own coin discoveries in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for being here, and we'll see you in the next video.